Oh, hey, what you're about to listen to is a conversation I had with Lorne Riseley, who you may know as the host of Defunct Games News. This is going to be a little different from our usual programming, so I just wanted to give you a little warning ahead of time. You may have noticed that we haven't posted as many reviews and features over the last few months, and I wanted to take some time and talk about what's been going on. Unfortunately, due to the virus and other things, this is not going to be the most upbeat conversation that I've had. In fact, I'm here to say that it's a little depressing. Yeah, this is a difficult conversation to have and completely out of my comfort zone, as I think you're going to hear when Lorne and I get into it. But even with all that, I still think that it's important to post, if only because I want to update everybody about what's been going on and say some things out loud, if only to make them feel more real. Now, one thing that I forgot to bring up during the conversation is my hair. Look, if I knew that I wouldn't be able to get a haircut for the rest of the year, then I definitely would have found somebody to do it in like January or February. No joke, my hair is currently well beyond my shoulders. It's seriously the longest it's been since my senior year in high school. And that was the 1990s, when every alternative rock band on MTV2 had long hair, so it was trendy. Now that you've seen that picture, here's what my hair looks like now. Wait, what? Why isn't the picture loading? Well, okay, here's another one that I took today. What the hell's going on here? Well, if none of these are gonna work, then let's just go ahead and jump into the conversation. Oh, wait, before I forget, I wasn't real sure what to put on the screen, and I didn't want it to just be like a static picture for an hour. So what I decided to do was intermix footage from Grand Theft Auto Online, which just so happens to be the only game we talk about in this episode. In fact, here's Drusetta Lily in her meth lab. Yeah, don't ask. She's going to be making a bunch of deliveries while you listen to a conversation that has, honestly, very little to do with Grand Theft Auto Online. I hope it won't be too distracting. All right, now that we're ready to go, on with the conversation. So, Lorne, I have a confession to make.
What's that?
I don't listen to a lot of gaming podcasts. Do you?
No, not very many.
Yeah. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts in general?
Occasionally, if it's a person or a subject I like. What about you?
I do actually. I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts and sort of stuff like that. A lot of improv but you know, the problem with, and there are a lot of gaming podcasts, and I've been on some of them. I've been on a bunch of them that have been very good, but they tend to fall into the same sort of traps where it's like we get the first few minutes as like what you've been playing, and then they argue about the hot topics, and then they get into reader question, and it's rinse, repeat every single time. And that's something I've been trying to avoid at Defunct Games for a long time. And so now you've been talking about wanting to do a podcast, and I think you know my opinion of the term podcast. That's actually an episode we can do in the future, because there are a bunch of words like that I don't like very much. So I'm just going to call this a conversation. And instead of doing the what have you been playing stuff and hot topics and stuff like that, I just wanted to have a conversation about just a single topic. And in this episode, I think that maybe we should start this by kind of recapping maybe the year as a whole, but just maybe the last few months, because definitely things have changed a lot. I think we can all agree over the last, at least since March and April, but even probably before that. And I kind of want to get into that, and I'm fearful. I'm fearful that this is going to get a little dark. This is going to be a little depressing for a while. This is not going to be the uplifting, podcast or conversation, whatever you want to call it, that most people are doing right now. But I promise we are eventually going to get to a hopeful bit. We're eventually going to get through this. I think.
I think so as well. Well, I think there's just to add to that, I think it's important for people to understand that this wasn't something that you were necessarily gung-ho about when it was first bandied about.
That's true.
I think, and that's not just you, I think a lot of people were, at least at points in this whole ordeal that we're all going through, have been compartmentalizing or internalizing a lot of their frustration. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to talk about it at least as much as you want to talk about it. And then, we go from there. So in this case, I'm happy to be here because I think we've both shared some of the things that we're going to talk about. And
yes,
we got some. Listen, I know what you're saying about that. Maybe it's not the most uplifting podcast or conversation in the world, but I think the fact that we can laugh about the fact that the word podcast is hilarious to both of us, good start.
It's such a bad. I mean, this isn't even going to. It's such a bad term.
It's a terrible word. It's not even a word that I can make a pun out of for Defunct Games. Defunct cast. Funked. See, it doesn't work.
That's a whole other episode. We'll figure that out.
We'll figure it out. Anyway.
But, so, we've tried to do this before. This is maybe our third or fourth attempt at this. And what's fun, that's a little inside baseball that you're going to learn only from this conversation. And what we apparently decided to do was wait for what is literally the hottest day of the year to do this. I just tossed some ice cubes in my water and they burst into flames. But look, we have some stuff to talk about when it comes to COVID. We have some stuff to get through because, as some of you have noticed, I have not done as many reviews. I have not updated as much. I've taken a few weeks off here and there. And we'll talk a little bit about why. Some of it may be obvious, some of it not so much, and then we'll get into where we're going to go from there, and also we'll talk a little bit about the birth of the Defunct Games news, and we're going to have. I'm not going to say we're going to have fun. This is not going to be fun, but we're going to get through it, and so. Let's flash back to December 31st, 2019. What were you hoping for when it came to 2020? What were your visions of 2020, Lorne?
Vastly different from what they are now. I think that's safe to say for everybody. But I guess more of the same from 2019. I've got to be honest with you. This whole situation has changed the path of what would have been significantly in both good and bad ways.
Yeah.
I'm probably in the lucky few in the sense that it has positively affected me in some aspects, other ways not so much. How about you?
I went into 2020 really excited because this, we had talked about this a little bit before, that we were going to add a bunch of new shows. We were going to bring some other people on. We were going to, we even recorded stuff that was going to be for a Patreon thing. We did a couple of afterthoughts commentaries, or we literally talked over these old shows that I did like a decade ago that are painful. They're the worst. Some of the worst things I've ever done, and we just dunked all over them. And then around February and March, the realization started to seep in that this was not going to be a normal year, and this was not going to go as planned. And part of that came from we'll just put it out there. Part of that came from the fact that I lost multiple jobs at almost the same time, as did, to be fair, as did a lot of people. Now, what I don't really talk about a lot is that for the past few years, bunch of years, I've been one of my main job when I'm not doing Defunct Games, sort of the thing that pays the bills, was I worked at a company that did promotions for Las Vegas nightclubs and events around the world. And obviously, the nightclub scene just took a big hit in the past few months for obvious reasons. Nobody's going to nightclubs these days. Hell, most people aren't even going to Vegas these days. So that company, who had been having some issues financially, just got to a point in the year where they said, you know what, even if nightclubs come back next year or whatever, I think we're just done here. And so I lost my income. This is probably the right time to mention that this is a bad time to lose a job, because there aren't a lot of jobs out there.
No doubt. I feel that it's important to stress to people at this point, and this is something that I had to get across to you as best I could when we started this, is that we understand that there are wider ramifications than just us. But that's kind of the point of this conversation, because it's important for us to, look, we get that there are other people that struggle. We get that there's a wider ramification to the one. We get we're all in this. That doesn't stop us personally feeling the way we do about our personal situations, because with all due respect, if we don't tell our stories or you don't tell your story, no one's going to tell it for you. No one's going to fight your corner for you. And you have internalized and, I don't want to say struggle, but you've had a lot that you've been trying to process. And this in particular was, I felt, a really good way of at least giving you, the opportunity to go back and forth with someone that hasn't experienced as much as you have, but certainly can relate to some of the things. So like you were saying, we've all, I think everyone to a certain degree has had that downturn effect. Even if it's not directly like you've lost your job, you know someone that has. You've got a family member that's struggling. You've got someone that now doesn't earn as much money as they used to, or doesn't have the same opportunities. You've got people who haven't been given the same opportunity that they would have done, to your point at the beginning of a year, which, this year I'm going to go to university, or I'm going to go on my first world trip, or whatever it is that they were planning on embarking on has been cut short, and it's not fair, but we have to deal with it in our own ways. And it's disappointing, but disappointing for different people. But for you specifically, losing, your main source of income, or at least your most readily available source of income, was a big deal to you. And I remember, it being really just the sense of, it's not fair. It's not fair, and you can't put the finger at someone and blame them, and that makes it even harder sometimes, because there's just this wave of resignation about the situation.
Exactly. And at first, maybe some of this was denial, but at first I thought, okay, that was obviously just part of where, I was getting money. That was a night that paid the bills. That was great. But I was at that point still freelancing for a bunch of different places. Like, for example, I was making videos and promotional videos and writing copy, writing press releases and stuff like that for different indie game and accessory companies. And so I figured, well, maybe what we can do is that we can use that money coming in to at least get me through, the 2 or 3 or 4 months that all this is going, and then hopefully everything will get back to normal. There will be a job out there for me, and I can go from there. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Some of those companies obviously delayed their games or their products, their accessories. They pushed them 6 months or 8 months down the road. Some of the people are just ghosting me at this point, where I just haven't heard from them, so I'm not even sure if, what's going to happen with those. And that's fine. That's fine. Everybody is, nobody really knows what's going on, and that's part of the problem of this. And it's the reason that it was sort of at that point where I started to lose hope. But even then, I figured, look, they're not going to kick me out. There's a moratorium on evictions. Yes, I'm going to have to pay a lot in the future, but that's fine. At least I can live here. And the better news is I'm already kind of a homebody. I am an introvert. So I figured, you know what? In some ways, things aren't going to be that bad. This was me still in a bit of denial. Things aren't going to be that bad. But then I realized that even though I am an introvert, and even though I love staying home and watching movies and playing games and just working on stuff, I realized that wasn't enough. And that there came a point where the news and the negativity online and sort of everything at once, the lack of money, just sort of everything at once, it affected me. And I would say that it's, it put me into a rut. But it's probably more fair to say that for a few months now, I've been battling a bit of depression, and this has not been a real fun time. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't done a lot of reviews. I've posted some features. We did some fun things here and there. We did a new show, This Old Magazine, which I had a lot of fun putting together. But I haven't done as many reviews, and I think that a lot of that comes down to just feeling that it wasn't real fair to the game developers. I didn't feel real balanced in, and like, I worried that, a company that just made, let's say, a middling game, I might have been way too harsh on it, and it wouldn't have been fair to them. And so I just, I didn't review a lot of stuff. And it's something that I have been kind of working towards doing again. It looks like you have something to say.
Well, Lorne. I was going to say, let's go back to, because, I mean, you kind of went, because again, this is totally who you are as a person. And I love you for it, but I want to get into this because I think it's important, because I think some people, if they haven't experienced it, they're going to experience it sooner or later in life. When you got the call or the email or whatever it was to say, hey, right, so times are tough. Really sorry to have to do this, but we can't keep you on. We'll let you know in the future if anything comes up, but for right now, we're really sorry. How did you? What was the immediate impact that had on you in terms of, man, like, can we not make this work? And I'm still happy to do this, or I'm happy to do this, or whatever. And it's just no, we're not prepared because we as a business, we're protecting ourselves rather than our employees or the people that have diligent. Look, you get paid for your work, of course.
Yeah.
But you still want to be valued. And when that value is undermined, or you're showing it to be, it's just not reciprocated, even if it's a job that you necessarily, you're not living and dying for it, but it's still your job. It's still something you get up to do every day, or you get up to do most days. How did that feel?
Well, it felt terrible, but I was in denial for a bunch of it. I was a little pessimistic. I'm always a little pessimistic, but I don't know. I felt like, I did honestly feel like, well, you know what, maybe I can parlay this into doing more freelance stuff and actually just do more of the stuff that I actually want to do, as opposed to, the stuff, because a lot of the reason that I, stayed with that company was comfort. It was easy, it was something that I had been doing for years. And so it was something that I really didn't have to think that much about. I could do it in my sleep. It wasn't satisfying. Most people work jobs where they're not especially satisfied, so that's not that unusual, and I'm not complaining about that. But, I thought, well, maybe this will be, the kick in the butt that I need to do stuff that I actually want to do. Maybe, I was already working with those other accessory and game companies. Maybe I can sort of parlay this bad news into something better, at least for a while. But I think as sort of the weeks went on and things got worse, that's when I realized that we're in for the long haul here, and I'm going to have to figure out how to get out of that funk. And a lot of the stuff that I normally rely on for comfort, I don't know, it just wasn't working. it wasn't doing it. I tried replaying the songs in Rock Band 4. I went through the Zucker Abraham Zucker films, like all the sort of 70s and 80s comedies that just didn't work. I tried figuring out what the hell the 8th episode of Twin Peaks The Return meant. None of it worked. And I don't know. I found that I just lacked motivation. I just couldn't do it.
But that comes back to something else that I think is important to touch on in this, because again, I think a lot of people can relate to it, if not directly, indirectly. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm speaking from my experience, I've lost jobs. I've lost jobs that I didn't even like. To an extent, I was probably not asking to be let go, but I certainly would have held on if they hadn't let me go.
Sure.
And it's this thing of, well, I still didn't get to leave on my terms. The only thing that gets you through at that point, at least in the immediacy, like you say, when that you kind of don't, especially if it happens like it's happened to me in the middle of a day. I think it was 1:00 in the afternoon at one point, someone let me go. And I remember getting my stuff, going to my car, driving home and thinking, right, what now? And it was only the fact that I decided, right, do you know what? I'm going to go and see somebody. Might have been my mum, my sister, whatever.
Yeah.
And you sort of sit there and you let the mundanity of their life soak in for a second. You just kind of go, okay, life goes on. It's not so bad. Okay, we'll pick ourselves up, dust ourselves up, going on in the morning. A critical component of this whole situation is that minimal contact that you're a homebody, you typically work from home, your work is online, all of these things, but you still have the option to go out and get yourself just a bit of interaction, a bit of outside contact, whatever it is, and that's been denied to you throughout this.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the problem. I mean, I live alone. My closest family is a good hour away. I don't really see a ton of people working at home. I feel a little isolated sometimes. I mean, most of the people that I talk to are online, and that's honestly one of the reasons why, Lorne, you and I have spent so much time talking in the past few weeks and months. But you know what's kind of funny about the situation is that in the first month or two, I genuinely felt pretty confident that I'd be okay with the isolation and with what was going on. I mean, I felt bad for the extroverts out there that couldn't be around other people, but as an introvert, like I felt like I had this thing. Like I got plenty of stuff to do. I'm gonna catch up on all the movies I missed. I have this whole Ingmar Bergman set that's like 32 movies or something that I want to go through, most of which I've never seen before. Like I can finally get back to playing my guitar or something I haven't done in a long time. I could go through Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War and just like a ton of other games that I've missed. Like, man, I felt like everything was going to be pretty good. And I was going to tackle this. Who needs to be around other people? Who needs to like touch other people or hug other people? Like, I got this thing. Everything is gonna be okay. But, after a while, yeah, you do ultimately, we're human beings. We do ultimately need to see other people. We're social creatures. And that has improved a little bit. I thankfully have seen my parents recently. And then, I have friends, but I didn't have any of them over. I've been taking it pretty seriously in the sense of not really going anywhere. Those first few months I did the thing where I bought, enough groceries to last 5 weeks. And then, so that I wouldn't have to go back to the store very often. There was a point where I had just so much frozen chicken.
There it is.
Emergency frozen chicken. If things got really bad, I felt like, man, I'd be okay. You can do 1,000 things with frozen chicken. I have enough seasoning for almost anything.
There you go.
But, no, I ultimately did need to, because I needed to get out, and I need, we all at a point do need to see other people.
You need the mundanity of life, man. I know it sounds silly, but we take it for granted a lot. And even the simplest of things, like, again, in your situation, just having someone, even if you don't necessarily believe them at the time, to say, hey, I've been where you've been, I get it sucks, but don't worry, you'll be okay. And you go, yeah, whatever. But then you kind of, you muddle through, as opposed to, the kind of people that you're going to come in contact with, maybe they're not as supportive as you need them to be, or maybe they're wrapped up in their own worlds to not see that you're struggling with something.
Yeah.
And then they may be not, but sometimes you do need that one person to just, grab you by the scruff of the neck and say, hey, listen to me. You're going to be okay, all right? Sucks right now, but just keep your head up, puff your chest out, crack on tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and sooner or later you're going to wake up one day and realise, oh, things are better today. But again, in this situation, with such a lack of contact from people that can reinforce the good things, as opposed to the people that, again, being online so much, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the negativity of it all. It doesn't do much for, again, the motivation of, I want to be positive, but what's the point in being positive if anyone's going to be negative about the positivity, or just negative about the thing that I'm trying to be positive about? So, like you said, it feeds into the thought process, which then, you start to second guess yourself. Am I being overly negative about this thing that I would have normally been okay with? Who knows, that motivation does wane when you don't have, even if it's minimal, that good reinforcement.
I feel like I had it, and look, this is going to sound like me throwing my friends under the bus, and you are not included in this, Lorne.
Aw.
But I feel like I kind of had the opposite of that for a bunch of the months. The people that I talked to the most spent almost all of March and April saying, hey, Cyril, don't worry. This thing's only going to last a month. This thing's not going to go very long. We're all, everything's going to be really, really good. This is probably going to be the best. And
I know this is only audio, but I have such skeptical face right now because I know it's retroactive, hypocritical, skeptical face, but no, you get it. They were maybe being optimistic at the time.
They were being very, foolishly optimistic.
Anyway.
But then, they were people and I love them, but they were ill-equipped to deal or to, I guess, give me sort of the things that I was wanting. And a lot of them sort of did the opposite, where the phrase I heard a bunch was, oh, Cyril, you're the only person I know who's suffering. Which, let me tell you, not the most motivating thing to say. And I don't want to sound like a whiner throughout this whole thing. I'm just saying that's it's not a great turn of phrase, and it sounds really dismissive.
Imagine that being something that you say to anyone in any given situation. Do you think that's really a comforting thing to say, to know that, oh, don't worry, you're literally the only one in the world suffering? That's not a good thing. Oh, wait, so the Lord's ire is directed solely at me. Great. That makes me feel so much better about the fact that all of you are okay and I'm not. Yay. That's like the opposite of empathy. Literally the opposite of I know how you feel to I have no idea what you feel. Life's great. I don't know what you're talking about. So, that's not the most supportive thing. Again, the difference there though is, again, that level of empathy isn't, like you say, it doesn't come naturally to some people. And again, maybe you'd have found that in different avenues of life had you been available to, there's a reason why bars are a thing, I guess. So you can go to a bar and have a drink and chill out for a bit, wander back, have an epiphany about life, fall asleep, wake up the next day and embrace the epiphany. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the nice things that has come from this, to be more positive, one of the nice things to come from this is that you and I have talked a lot more frequently. We're now talking not just once a week, sometimes twice a week. This is the second time in 4 days that we've chatted.
God bless you.
And I think we have another chat in a couple of days when we're going to talk about Defunct Games news, which is another great thing to come from this, which is as I felt the weight, as I lacked motivation, as I, tried my hardest to get out of bed, one of the nice things was I felt like, you picked up a lot of that weight and helped out a lot when it came to that. And you've created 9, going on 10 great shows. The next episode may suck, so I can't say that. You've done 9 great shows and the potential of a 10th great show. But and that's given me something to look forward to. That's given me, to watch those. I love seeing, because it's the audience doesn't know this, that we don't, I don't actually know what it's going to look like half of the time, most of the time when it, we'll go over the stories you want to talk about, and I'll add we'll talk about some of the storylines and stuff like that. But like, it's not until that Saturday that I see it, and that's always one of the most exciting things each week for me.
It's an important thing to stress. I mean, every week we sit down, I pitch an episode 15 minutes long of me listing all the reasons why Robert Pattinson's going to be a terrible Batman. You shoot all of them down. You say, no, Lorne, we're a gaming channel. We've got to focus on gaming. We've got to make a gaming news show. The games and Defunct Games news has to mean something. And we move on, and every week I come up with a show that doesn't reference Robert Pattinson. No, I'm lying. I think I referenced him in the 7th
you've done
episode,
it a bunch of weeks.
Oh, have I? Okay, maybe I sneak them in. Maybe it's a good idea. But yeah, I mean, it's this thing. That had an interesting connotation for the both of us, because again, I've been in the same boat as you, man, and I think a lot of people aren't talking about the lack of motivation that they feel. Yeah. But I think most people are getting it from other people, whereas, again, you're a classic example of someone that I know, I don't want to belittle you by saying puts on a brave face, but someone that is willing to plow on nevertheless, someone who is willing to turn the other cheek, someone that is always trying to find the nugget of good in any given situation, to go, well, at least this. Well, think about this. And that's always been an inspiration to me. So the idea that you've been struggling is something that made me feel sad, but also kind of reassured me, look, we're all human. We all go through our peaks and troughs. Yeah. And it's not fair when we have to go through them. And we shouldn't condemn people who find, that manage to find their happiness or find their solace in whatever it is. And you mentioned that we're going to turn into some of the positive things. Some of the things that you referenced, again, they might sound silly to other people, but here's the thing, man. Life's just... You got to find the positivity in it sometimes, especially in the situation that we all find ourselves in, where, people are losing their jobs, people are losing their homes, people are losing loved ones. Let's not get away from the reality of the situation. But we have to find a way to grind on, even if it sucks.
That's an important point. Let's not, as much as this is a woe is me thing, let's not gloss over the fact that, around the world, was it hundreds of thousands of people? I don't know I don't know what the number is. I know that it's high. It's here in the U.S. It's around 140,000 dead when we're recording
nothing.
This.
Let's put it that way.
It's definitely not nothing. And one of the good things about this, thankfully, knock on wood, I have not gotten sick. Nobody in my family, as far as I know, has gotten sick. I have not been personally affected. I have economically, but at least illness-wise, I have not been personally affected by this, and hopefully that will continue. And my heart goes out to everybody who has, because they're in a much worse situation than me, and I always, that is something that I want to remember, that I always have to remind myself, because, as bad as economic things are, it could always be worse. And for a lot of people, it is worse. And I don't want to forget that or just gloss over that.
But I don't want people to let that get in the way of how they feel. And that's something that's a balance, man. I'm not saying that it's all me, you, or I. But in your case specifically, again, it's one of those things where you go through what you go through and no one's going to bear it but you. So you can't, especially you, when you're like, man, I'm just not feeling it today, Right. Okay, don't feel it today. Don't force yourself to feel it today.
And it's been that way for a while, where, you know, like the things that I would do, you know, the projects I would work on, or the things that I would do to keep myself motivated, they're not working. They're not working like they used to. And I think that's affected me as well. Like you know, it's that you want to do this. You feel like you owe it to, you know, to put out the reviews and to do all this stuff. But at a point, you know, when it's not working, it feels like writer's block.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've had that or not, but like it feels like the worst writer's block, where I mean, but it is, you know, that is something that I'm working through, something that I feel like the worst is behind me in that regard. And one of the reasons that we're talking about it here, to kind of talk through it and to just be honest about it. Cause I'm not the only person. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I see it on my Twitter timeline. I see it with other critics. I see it with other creators, that sometimes you really do have to take some time for yourself. And sometimes you gotta get through it and find that thing that motivates you again, which is what I'm doing now, and one of the reasons that we're kind of being open about this and talking about it.
I love that. How I've just gone on by saying, yeah, let's talk about you, and you've gone, yeah, but what about everyone else, man? No, Cyril. Let's talk about Cyril here. Everyone else can come on the not podcast another time. We'll focus on Cyril. Right. I mean, to your point, I just want to come back to that. I mean, you personally, how do you feel about addressing that? How have you sort of thought about how you're going to process that? Do you feel like embracing the grind and grinding even harder is the way to go? Do you feel like taking your foot off the gas has been a good thing? Maybe it's been a bad thing. How would you change your approach in retrospect? I mean, what sorts of things you've been thinking about how you've been feeling about the situation? I mean, because again, I know everyone has their own their own approaches and thoughts on the matter. Personally, I've done both. I've thrown myself into certain things 100%. Other things I've completely taken my foot off the gas. Some work, some don't. How do you feel about it?
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest that all of this entire conversation is out of my comfort zone. I'm so used to writing scripted series and, you know, doing research and doing all that sort of thing. So sitting here talking about me and sitting here talking about, you know, like my mental state is a little scary and out of my comfort zone. And I, you know, even more fearful of people listening to this and just thinking that I'm whining, because I don't want to come across that way.
Wait a minute.
So yeah, I'm a little in my head with that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. What was that?
I said that was my line. You just.
Oh.
No, I know the feeling, and I understand that. Speaking from the heart and speaking from the hip, you know, shooting from the hip is never easy, because again, you always worry about inclusiveness, and you don't want to generalize, but at the same time, you don't want to be too inclusive, you know, about you. But you can only talk about how you feel. You can't speak for everybody else about what they're going through. You're going through what you're going through, and let's get back to the positive stuff, because I do want to, because I think what you've said has given you some positivity is interesting in its own way because of why it's given you some positivity. So when you say that you tried some of the things that you would normally do for comfort, and they haven't given you comfort, or at least they haven't made you feel as happy as maybe they previously did.
Yeah.
What did you turn to, and why do you think they gave you that sort of that little boost that you needed?
Well, I've turned to a few things. I've turned to what of all things, and I don't think I'm alone here. From what I've been reading, I kind of jumped into to Grand Theft Auto Online for like the first time in 6 years. It's one of those where I played it, you know, the online version. I played it right when it came out, and I was like, there's not a lot here. and then stopped playing it for years and years and years and years. As it turns out, they've been supporting it in all of those years. And now there's a whole bunch of content, all of which I sort of binged at once. And in a weird way, it's been kind of cathartic. It's something I didn't expect. I had basically all but written GTA Online off. Like, I didn't expect to ever play that again. I mean, come on. It's 7 years old. If I want to play Grand Theft Auto again, I'll probably just go through the story again. I mean, it's been a bunch of years. There are a lot of story beats in that I definitely don't remember. And hell, if they're not going to release Grand Theft Auto 6 anytime soon, I mean, I might as well, though, how much time do we really have? I don't know if I'm going to dedicate that much time to going through the story mode again. But apparently, like, look, I found a lot to do. I found a lot to love. I had no idea what to expect. But, all of a sudden, I was opening up businesses. I was running deliveries. I was buying flying bikes. There's a whole arcade that you can buy, and you can play, like, there's like a dozen retro games. There's like an Outrun clone in there. It's great. Boy, I don't know, I've probably sunk like, I don't even want to look at how many hours I've put into that game in the last couple of months. But it's been nice. Like, it really has. It's nice going through something that I'm not reviewing for a change. It's nice doing something that just is for me.
Let me just clarify, ladies and gentlemen. This man has been bowling out of control. If you had any idea of the amount of cash flow he's got coming in at the moment, you wouldn't even begin to believe it. But it's fascinating because, like you said, it's
money weekends.
Yeah, well, you were telling me how, like, oh yeah, I'm making this amount of money. I'm like, wait, what? Like, yeah, well, once you get to this, and this, and it's like, there's money. It's so casual about it.
Those deliveries.
So casual about it. Like, I'm not even on my GTA Online account anymore because I looked at the price of a coat. I'm like, $150,000 for a coat. Offline it is then, when I go back into my story mode where I've got $100 million to buy the golf course and still don't quite have enough.
But I've been throwing myself into that, which has surprised me because I've never been a big MMO person. I don't really play that many online games, to be honest. And I barely play as an online game. So yeah, that's in a weird way, that's helped out quite a bit. Of course, it's not something that I can do any content about when it comes to, the website or the channel or anything, but I think that's really helped. And okay, so this next little bit's gonna be a little off topic, but you know what? Screw it. This this whole thing has been incredibly off topic. This whole thing. I mean, we barely talked about games at all. So let's just jump into this now. As a lot of people know, I'm a collector of the Criterion Collection. They put out a lot of old, a lot of rare, a lot of cult classics, a lot of just classics in general, a lot of foreign movies. And at this point, man, I've been collecting them for 20 years or more. And between the DVDs and Blu-rays, I have hundreds of them. I have, like over 400 at this point. And so the problem is that, like any collection, I'm sure a lot of people out there can sympathize with this or will completely relate when it comes to this with video games. When you buy a lot of them, especially when you buy a lot of them at once, which I did with a lot of the sales, if I'm being honest, when you buy a lot of something, most of them kind of go on the backlog. We'll get to them later, and unfortunately that's what's happened to a significant amount of movies that I own, and I want to rectify that. That is something, especially now that I have so much time, now that I'm stuck at home. And speaking of being stuck at home, that's why I've devised the World of Cinema Tour. That has been my plan. It's something that I've kind of been going through week by week, and this may in fact even be something that I want to, maybe I'll spin off like an update show or something where I just I show my journey from one country to the next, because the idea is that I want to, excluding the United States for obvious reasons, I want to see how many countries I can travel to based on, the movies they put out, movies made in those countries, not like American movies that were just happened to be in another country, but I'm talking about like a movie that was, made in Canada or made in Mexico or made, wherever. And preferably something with subtitles for most of them. And the idea is I want to travel from one country to another and see how many countries I can visit without repeating any. Again, excluding the United States, because that's going to be impossible. I still want to catch up on new, movies released here. So anyway, the idea is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in Canada and then work my way to Mexico, and then eventually go to like the UK with with the rest of Europe, with like Sweden and Norway and Austria. I have a bunch of movies already picked out, most of which I've either not seen before or I haven't seen in a really long time. And so the idea is as of right now, and I may add some as I go along here, but as of right now, I have about 21 movies all ready to go, and I want to do this over, the next few weeks, and eventually end in like Hong Kong, Japan, and Australia. Again, that's not video game related, and maybe it would be weird to do like a short update about it every week or two, but I think, I don't know, maybe people would be interested, maybe people wouldn't. I want to document it somehow, because at least I've done a few movies already, and I've had a lot of fun doing that. And it's fun to see the world through cinema. I think that's something that most of us can agree on.
I think it's interesting that you've mentioned like the things that you said that normally give you comfort but don't. The things that you've gone into now, the things you've gone into now have a sense of progression, whereas the things that you've got comfort in don't. And I think it's the opposite, because at the moment, all you have is this sense of, well, now I have time. I have to progress with things. I have to, I don't have the excuse anymore of always being busy with other things, like with travel or with contending with plans or whatever. But that pressure doesn't necessarily change what you want to do, which is, I just don't want to do that. I want to find something else to apply myself to. And with GTA Online and with your cinema tour, you still, like I say, you're making your way through a game that you didn't understand. You didn't realize had as much content as it ended up doing, because it has progressed in such a long period of time. Because
they've supported the hell out of that.
It's going to be re-released on the PlayStation 12 one day, and we all know it. And the world of cinema tour, which like you say, is like, wow, I'm kind of making my way through these movies, and they give me different. They take me on different journeys and different stories, and I think that speaks to a wider thing. Again, a lot of other people are going through, which is, I don't have the excuse anymore, but it's not enough. That in of itself of, well, you've got all the time in the world now. Now you can, hey Cyril, now that you don't have to worry about going anywhere, you can make 5 videos a week or 10 videos a week, and it's like, well, that's not motivation. That's opportunity. But the motivation has to come from somewhere else oftentimes, if it's a monetary incentive, or if it's an opportunity that could lead to something else down the line, or just a passion project, something you're really, really passionate about. I think that's been sucked from a lot of people in this period, is passion. Passion for something new has to come from the progression of it. And because nothing can really progress at the moment, I think it's surprising that you in particular have felt, well, why? What's the next step? Where does it lead to? So I don't think that's surprising at all. And I think the fact that you've kind of said, I know other people, there's a guilt that comes in there, that creeps in, where it's like, oh, I do have time, I guess, and I guess I do have other opportunities, and I do have the opportunity to do the thing that I have, whereas other people don't. If people are musicians, or if they're comedians, or if they're sportsmen, they can't do what they do. That's not incentive. That doesn't propel you,
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's an astute observation.
It's an amazing thought to think that if a developer cared about its own game enough to support it enough that it goes over effectively 3 generations.
Yeah.
Imagine if every game had not even the same level, but let's say half. Imagine what most games could be, if not, well, hey guys, we could do that, or there's going to be
Just
another
by
FIFA next year.
The sequel, yeah.
Yeah, which, by the way, I saw a number of gaming outlets clarify is the sequel to FIFA 20. I thought that was an astute observation. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I wasn't sure what the 20 after the 21 would have meant, but, thank you very much. But that's like, some game companies, no, we've got every year, new one, because new is better. New is better. It's like, well, is it? GTA has been old, technically speaking, for 7 years. And it's as good as it's ever been.
It's a last generation game. It's almost retro at this point.
At this point, it's crazy how old that game is, and yet it's not perceived as old at all. Same as Minecraft, same as Fortnite. They've been around for a while now, and yet they find new ways of invigorating their fan base. It's crazy how well they do it, but then again, you could argue that leans into their uniqueness. Not every game can have that level of dedication and detail put into it, and that's what makes them special. But it would be nice if most game developers, especially I see it with indie developers all the time, where they put a lot of effort into getting the game, and then they do everything they can to support it and get the word out. Mainstream developers did the same thing. It'd be a crazy what kind of games we'd have on offer, and what we'd be able to digest in the lockdown. But sadly, not so.
While I've been doing that, like I've been rebuilding, my motivation. I've been, getting more into it. You've noticed there have been a couple more reviews each week, sort of getting back into the swing of things. And, in this week, I have several reviews planned to go up, including stuff that I think I normally would have played with other people locally. I had a friend over to review and stuff like that. But it's, I've been building myself up and trying to get back to where I was on December 31st, 2019, where I was thinking, this is going to be the year where, we do the Patreon. This is going to be the year where I have a bunch of new shows. This is going to be the year where, and some of that stuff, to be fair, some of that stuff did happen. I have been incredibly reticent from the early days of Defunct Games to do advertising. Like, it took the person that I did the website with years to get me to add Google AdSense to it. And afterwards I was happy I did. For years on the YouTube channel, no ads, nothing. And then I believe the very first video of this year was the first time that I added them. In fact, I haven't even gone back to add with the hundreds of other reviews and features and stuff like that. I haven't turned those on, so anything prior to this year is basically still ad-free. This was going to be the year where we had a bunch of ideas, because we had brainstormed this. We had a bunch of ideas for the Patreon stuff, and then other ways of, some merch, other ways of doing what a lot of other channels did. And it's not that I couldn't have done that. We still could have posted those episodes. I created a Patreon page that's technically available. It's just one of those things where the moment that COVID hit, the moment that the economy shut down, I just sort of felt like, in good conscience, I had a real hard time asking people for money and asking people to support that, and because I figure everybody else is hurting, or enough other people are hurting. This is the worst time to do that, and so it's one of those things that I'm still pushing down. Kind of kicking down the street. That's not the saying, right? Whatever. Did I mention that it's really hot?
It is really hot on your end.
10 pounds right now from just sitting here sweating.
I also think it's worth pointing out to people, by the way, that his reticence is not lost on me. I've basically been the guy in every movie that you ever see where he goes up to the young protege and whispers in his ear, "Hey man, you can make more money with me. Come on my side, and I'll make you all the money in the world." But I was training with this guy. Nah, you don't want to train with him, you want to come and train with me. I'm basically the guy who recruits Tommy Gunn at the end of Rocky V. And Cyril's poor Tommy Gunn, who should have stayed with Rocky Balboa, and I'm over here going, he's going to be the greatest of all time. If he signs with me, I'll get him all the money. Just do the Patreon, do the merch, do everything. Super chats, money. And Cyril has said no, as best he can, because, again, I think we both have the same outlook on it, which is, you know, we don't look at it from the same perspective that I know a lot of other people, especially that I have conversations with about content, like, well, how much money do you make? Well, I don't make anything. Well, why not? Well, because I don't know. I just don't look at it that way. I don't look at my content as a way of making money. Maybe if I did, I would make money, and maybe if I applied myself, because I know I've met people who have not even half the following of me that make money off it, even if it's just a $20 or I guess $30 a month Patreon, and you go, well, $30 bucks is $30. More than I make. But it's that thing of, I just don't know if I want to pull the trigger on it. I don't know why.
Just to clarify for the audience, that when you're talking about yourself, you're talking about the Halcyon show. Which is
I am talking about, your
YouTube channel.
Yeah, the silly little thing that I call my show. my little project that I have to clarify what it is every time someone asks me, what the hell? What's a Halcyon? What's a Halcyon?
Oh no.
What's a Halcyon, Lorne?
Well, that's another episode, and you pitched the idea of doing the podcast at the right time. I'm not calling it a podcast. This conversation at the right time, which is
that right there is my influence, people. He didn't call them podcasts before I kept on saying, "Hey, come do podcast." But it's not a podcast, Lorne. Okay, we won't call it a podcast, but do the podcast.
You pitched it at the right time because there are a lot of things I kind of want to do a deep dive on and just have a conversation about. And that's something that you and I are going to do more often in the future, so that because I want to have more of these sort of conversations and a back and forth, so that it's not just a situation where it's me, reading a scripted thing or reviewing a certain type of game or what have you. I want to diversify what's happening on the site and happening on the YouTube channel more, and make it a little bit more open and kind of get out of my comfort zone, because I feel like every time that I do get out of my comfort zone, with the exception of a few times, the for the most part, I do feel like that ends up bringing reward. Like I am more satisfied by it, and it's something that I fear, but then am ultimately happy with. And so I do appreciate you listening to me about that. And the positive thing I'm going to take from this is that it's forced me to examine, especially the last few weeks when I've kind of been taking notes about this. It's forced me to examine exactly where I am, mentally. And and kind of think about, like, well, why didn't I review some of those things? Why, is there so much on the back burner? What's going on? And it's forced me to reflect on that, which is not necessarily something that I had been doing a lot. And I think that is not only healthy, but it's something that's going to, it's sort of the reason why I've gotten back into playing more games, doing more reviews. I have a bunch of, ideas that I have written down of things that I want to do. There are shows that people have been asking me to do for a long time that I've been putting off that I definitely want to do. It's just, a matter of doing and getting the motivation to do that. And I'm feeling it more and more with each game I review, with each person I talk to, with all of the comments, and just this conversation here. Like, all of that is I'm not at 100% yet, but I am definitely not in the same rut that I was a month ago. I am not as doom and gloom as I was before, which is a good thing. And I want to continue to have these sort of conversations, not necessarily on this topic. We have actually a lot of stuff to talk about, and we'll sprinkle. I think you're okay with us sprinkling that in a little bit more, just every week or two, Lorne?
Oh, go on then. I mean, quite frankly, I have the cure for any motivation that you might lack anyway. I can only speak for Defunct Games News, which is something that I've got into now. I keep getting these notes from a CL saying if I don't produce one, I'm fired. That makes me really motivated to get them done because, quite frankly, I don't know what being fired on Defunct Games means. It could very well literally mean a cannon and being fired into something like a sea or sharks, or I don't know. I don't know what the budget is these days because I lost it all. A holiday for the
budget is very low right now.
Hey, it was enough to send the staff on holiday to Barbados, so there's budget I don't have access to. But yeah, look, I can't speak for anyone that takes the time to listen to this, but I know that it took some gall to actually say, yep, let's talk about it, because I did a video a long time ago now, just where I just said, hey, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And I felt weird saying it, and I felt guilty immediately after posting the thing, and I thought about deleting it every day for about a month afterwards. But the response was overwhelming. I was glad to get it off my chest. Once it was off my chest, I moved on, and I've thought about doing a video since, just saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm good.
No.
Haven't quite done that yet because there's always been something to moan about, but nevertheless, the fact that you've taken the time to kind of say, hey, the reviews are slowed down, there is a reason for it, it's not laziness, it is what it is, and it won't always be that way, and I'm in a better place than when I was, not quite back yet, but you're working on it, and that's all you can do. Just work on it every day. Just let's grind through this one, and let's grind through the next one. And this time next year, Cyril, we'll be millionaires.
We're going to rob Ninja.
We're going to rob Ninja. I hear a Dr. Disrespect is currently out of work and there's a hole in Twitch. I'm sure. Hey, listen, you can yell incoherently over Fortnite, can't you?
I bet. Yeah.
3 hours, 4 hours a day. You can do that. It's fine. I mean, I don't know if I could. I think I'd get bored after about 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at yelling. That's something we'll that's one of the topics that we actually have for another episode, which is sort of looking at what other people do on YouTube and Twitch.
We do need to address that. Yeah.
We have a lot. I think we have a lot to talk about on that subject, but I think that's going to be for another day. What I can say right now, though, is that I think the reason that I'm kind of going through this now, as opposed to a month ago, is that I want to just reassure people that I'm still here. We're gonna have new reviews. We're gonna have new features. I'm working on new episodes of the EGM Best and Worst. I'm still healthy. Things are getting better. I think. But things are getting better, and I think that people will start to notice a difference in the next week or two. And once again, I do want to thank you for lifting some of the weight with the Defunct Games news, and the reception has been great.
It's been a fabulous opportunity, and the reception from the audience generally has been lovely. From the people who said I'd never make it. You were right, but I continue to not make it every day, and there were people
at the start of it that said it
won't
even last 2 or 3 episodes, and here we are going into episode 10. You're showing them wrong.
Yeah. Well,
proving them wrong.
proving them wrong every time. But listen, it's been a wonderful experience being able to make it. I've said it to you. I've said it on Twitter. It's been lovely. I'm not going to go too sappy, but it's been lovely being able to do something that has given me the same motivation that you're currently striving for. You've given that to me, and I owe you for that. And I know that a lot of people, and you might not ever concede this, but I know a lot of people tune in religiously to watch your stuff, not because it's a habit, not because of any loyalty, blind loyalty. It's because what you do, you're damn good at. And I know that you saying, I'm back, I'm going to be doing more reviews, we're going to be getting back on it, is a symphony to people's ears, man. Me specifically, because, again, what you do, you're the best. I'm not even going to put it.
You're too kind.
No, you are the aspiration for a lot of people, whether or not they want to admit it or not. And that's not hyperbole. That is what you do is brilliant. And doing more of it, amen. More.
I could not ask for a nicer compliment. Thank you, Lorne. That means a lot.
Do I get more budget next week for DGN now?
No. Oh, I think that's boy. I don't know if I have anything more to add to this topic, so I think this is a natural place to end. The good news is that the next time Lorne and I have a conversation, we're going to have a much more upbeat and funny topic. It'll be something that you'll want to look forward to. I promise not every one of these is going to be as depressing as this one. I promise. I want to thank everybody for listening and sticking with us. I love the comments. I love reading those every day, and it's honestly one of the main reasons why I do it. So I think unless you have something else you want to add, Lorne, I think that this is a good. Maybe we should end this.
I think we should. I think just stay safe, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to let us talk. And we'll do this again. Next time we'll have some fun. And I look forward to it.
All right. Podcast out! Hey, thanks for listening to our conversation. If you liked what you saw here, then I guess I'd ask you, why do you like seeing me in misery? What's wrong with you? We'll have another conversation in a week or two, this time with a much more upbeat topic, I promise. Now here's the question I have for you. So, how are things going for you? Well, that's the question. Go ahead and answer that how you see fit. We're back soon with more reviews and who knows, maybe even a game over episode. We're up to like 101 or something. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.